Well, I think there'll be demolition. I don't think it's going to be controlled in any way. Look, I mean, revaluing gold, our official value, I mean, doesn't change anything, right? I mean, if you just say, okay, we're going to count our gold, instead of saying it's worth $42 an ounce, we're going to say it's worth $3,300 an ounce. That's just an accounting. It means nothing because, we're not doing anything with the gold. And if the U.S. government was going to sell the gold, it wouldn't sell it at $42. It would sell it for the market price. So it doesn't change anything. There are people who think, well, this gives us extra money to spend. No, it doesn't. It doesn't give us anything. I know, that Senator Loomis says, well, let's revalue the gold and then use the money to buy Bitcoin. What money? There is no money. There's just the gold. You don't get any extra money. But if what she's saying is, well, let's use the gold and somehow print more money. Let's have the Fed print up a bunch of money because we've now officially recognized what the gold is worth. And then we're going to take that new money that we just printed and use it to buy Bitcoin. It's like, okay, let's create inflation and buy Bitcoin, right? Why would we do that, right? Why would we just debase the currency just to go out and buy Bitcoin? So it doesn't solve any problem. The only thing that would make sense about a revaluation of gold is if we're going to maybe go back on a gold standard, have an official devaluation of the dollar, including of our debt. Because if we were to say, okay, gold is now $20,000 an ounce, and we're going to repay our debts in gold at $20,000 an ounce, right? So now, we've basically defaulted on a lot of our debt without really defaulting because we're going to pay it off in gold. And we just said that the gold is now worth 20,000 or 30,000 an ounce. So we wipe out 90% of our debt. But it doesn't even make sense to do that unless you're going to peg the dollar to gold and maintain that. But, at this point, and initially, of course, the dollar wasn't pegged to gold. The dollar was gold. I mean, that was the literal definition of a dollar. A dollar was a weight of gold. That's what it was, right? It was a way to measure gold. If you had a certain quantity of gold, it was called a dollar. That was the legal definition. So gold was our money. Our money wasn't backed by gold. Our money was gold. What we eventually did is we created currency that was backed by money. But the currency was never money. It was a money substitute that you could use instead of money because it was more convenient than money. But what gave currency value was the money that backed it up, which was gold. So if we were to go back on that standard, yeah, that'd be great. And we can't do it unless we devalue the dollar officially and reprice gold. But I don't see any appetite in Congress to do that because that would mean they'd have to cut spending. And so, but they're not cutting spending now. So why do they want to go back on a gold standard that would force them to cut spending? The reason we went off the gold standard is because politicians wanted to spend a lot of money that they didn't have. Gold was preventing them from doing that. And, when I hear people in the crypto community say, oh, gold didn't work, gold failed. Gold worked perfectly. That's why the U.S. government abandoned it, because it was doing its job. It would have stopped them from deficit spending. It would have forced politicians to make difficult political choices that they didn't want to make. So instead of making those choices, they chose to leave the gold standard, right? But that doesn't mean that gold failed. That's people, human beings failed, right? And Bitcoin doesn't fix that. Yeah, that's exactly what I said. Look, the U.S., Donald Trump has made it clear that we can't have these trade deficits. And okay, that means we're leaving the dollar's reserve status because it's a consequence. Our trade deficits are a consequence of the dollar being the reserve currency. And that's what enables us to live beyond our means. And this is in the process of ending. And that's why gold moved from about $2,000 an ounce at the beginning of last year and to now, 3,300, right? It's got as high almost 3,500. So if we've had a 50% move in the price of gold. During that time, you didn't see a lot of public interest in gold. I mean, most Americans were selling gold for that entire run. It's been central banks that have been accumulating. And why are they accumulating gold? Because they are divesting of dollars. right? They are converting their dollars into gold, and they're shunning the interest that they could earn, because when you have dollars, you could buy treasuries and earn 4%. When you have gold, you earn nothing. In fact, you got to pay a little bit of money to store it, or maybe you've got your own storage facility, but you got to pay for the facility. It doesn't cost anything to store treasuries, and you get paid a yield. But the fact that these foreign central banks don't want that yield shows you that they realize the yield is not enough to make up for the loss of value of the dollar. And so they'd rather own gold that yields nothing than dollars that yield something. And so far, the return that they've had on their gold dwarfs the little bit of interest they would have earned on their dollars. And I think for that reason, gold's going to keep on rising. If you look at the amount of gold that most central banks own, particularly in the emerging markets and the countries that have the largest surpluses with the U.S., they have the most foreign exchange reserves. They still have a tiny fraction of those reserves allocated to gold. And they keep growing because they keep accumulating more dollars, because they keep having these surpluses with us. So more and more of that money, of those currencies, are going to move into gold. So gold is replacing the dollar as the primary monetary reserve. It's not the euro that's replacing the dollar or the pound or the yen or the RMB or any of these currencies. It's real money. I mean, because before the dollar was the primary reserve, it was gold. And the only reason that the dollar was accepted as the reserve was because it was redeemable in gold. So if you had Federal Reserve notes in the 1950s and 1960s, you had gold. When they said the dollar was as good as gold, they meant it, because the dollar was gold, except you could earn interest. Now, we screwed the world over when we defaulted on that promise, but it was initially gold that was the reason the world accepted the deal at Bretton Woods. So I think that is in the process of changing. But, what's interesting from your perspective, and you should think about this, is if you're so sure that Bitcoin is the new gold, is superior to gold, is better than gold, why are these central banks not buying it now? Why are they all buying gold? If gold is the past and Bitcoin is the future, why are all these central banks ignoring Bitcoin and just buying gold? Well, realistically, there's very little that can be done, because the politics are just not there. Again, there is no way to do what needs to be done without short-term pain. Mm-hmm. And it will be significant for a lot of people. The people who have depended on government, right, they're going to feel the most pain, because they're going to lose that government support because the government is broke. So for the government to relieve the economy, it has to stop all those subsidies. It has to stop all those payments. But if we're going to invest in building factories, in reconstituting supply chains, because the factories are no good if you don't have the supplies, to provision them, and then in training the workers. So it's going to take a lot of investment to get back what we lost over the last several decades. Where's the money going to come from to do all that, right? So we have to save our money so that it can be used to finance this reindustrialization. You can't spend and save the same money. It's one or the other. So Americans have to stop spending. But the whole economy is based on Americans spending money. Right. Most people's jobs are a byproduct of people spending money. Well, if they stop spending that money, then those jobs go away. And so we have a massive recession as we have to go from a borrow and spend economy to a save and produce economy. Interest rates have to go way up. They're too low, right? That's one of the reasons that we don't save. And that's one of the reasons that we don't produce, which is why we import, because we don't have the factories, because we don't have the savings to finance the investment. So how do you get more savings? Higher interest rates. Higher interest rates reward savers. Hey, I can put my money in the bank and I'm going to earn all this interest. And higher interest rates discourage borrowing. Oh, I'm not going to borrow money to buy something because, I'm not going to go buy a new car if a car loan is 15 or 20%. I'm just going to drive the car I got. I'm going to put my money in the bank. I'm going to earn. All right, I can't take it. So that's what has to happen. But when interest rates go up, now a lot of the debt that was taken on when rates are low the borrowers can't afford the higher rates. So there's a lot of defaults, including the U.S. government, right? If interest rates go way up, which is what they need to do for us to reindustrialize, that means the U.S. government has to default on treasuries. So that's a big deal, right? Because the U.S. government, there's no way the government could pay the interest if interest rates went to, let's say, 10%. I mean, it's just not even feasible to do it. So they have to default. But nobody wants to do that. So if we're not prepared to default on treasuries, then we can't let interest rates go up. And if we can't let interest rates go up, we're never going to save. And if we're not going to save, we're not going to build factories. So all the things that need to happen will never happen because of how politically unpopular they are. Which is why it's almost like it's a foregone conclusion that we're just going to destroy the currency, and then they don't have any choice, right?
As Peter just made clear, this isn't speculation, it's history repeating. The dollar is losing trust, gold is gaining ground, and the global shift is already in motion. If you value truth over headlines, give this video a like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss what's really going on behind the scenes of the U.S. economy.